So what would you think if I told you I was almost murdered in cold blood at work? You'd probably say, what kind of job did you have, Z? So instead of doing a reaction video today, this is going to be a personal story of mine about the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me in my life. And it happened, I'll say about 10 or 15 years ago when I worked at a used car lot. I used to go outside and have my smoke breaks in the back. At the time, I remember I would smoke Black and Milds, and I ended up just like leaning up against the doorway typically. A lot of times there was activity in the back. The porter would be washing cars there, detailing cars normally, and sometimes there would be a few other specialty companies that we worked with working on rims and tires. It was a used car company, right? Well, I went in the back one day and started smoking my Black and Mild, and I remember at the time our porter was not there. He just, I don't remember why he wasn't there, but he wasn't there. If you're not really familiar with it, a porter is someone that transfers cars for you when you work at a car dealership. So if you have multiple dealerships, the porter would bring cars back and forth from one dealership to the other, take them to get inspections and cleaned and a ton of other things, you know, oil changes, brake jobs, whatever. He would do the transfer. So the salespeople could watch the parking lot for new customers to come in. So the porter was not there, and that means that everybody else was doing the porter's jobs, and my buddy Rodney just happened to be doing some moonlighting as a detailer at the time. So Rodney was a salesperson just like us, but sometimes it was a little slow, and to make some extra money, he had made a deal with my boss to where he would do the porter's job for some of the porter's money, and it worked out just fine. Well, here Rodney is washing an old Honda Accord. I remember very well because it was an old beige Honda Accord, and I hated that color. It was just a terrible colored car in my opinion. But I was smoking and he was detailing this car, and he stopped for a moment to chat with me while he was actually filling up a gas can. So he had a pressure washer out there, and he was washing it down, and it needed to be gassed up. So Rodney had two large yellow gloves on, type of yellow gloves that you would see if people were working with chemicals, which he was, because the stuff that we pressure wash cars with was pretty strong stuff. So he had two large yellow gloves on, and he was stooped down to fill up the gas in the pressure washer. So along comes a fella through the back, and where the car lot is situated, we actually are next to a field on the right side of us. If you're facing the actual dealership, on the right side there was a field, and on the left side there was a fast food restaurant. And he came from the direction of the fast food restaurant. I don't know what he was doing coming towards the back, but he wasn't walking in the street like most people that would be heading that direction. They would be walking closer to the street in the front of the parking lot or whatever. Well, he came from the fast food restaurant, and he approached Rodney, and he asked Rodney if he was making bombs. Rodney looked at the guy and was like, no. What are you talking about? And he said, I asked you a question, are you making bombs? Now, before I go to the next part of the story, I just want to tell you that the way that this guy was dressed, you wouldn't really think that he was troubled or homeless or anything, but it turns out he was. See, he was a younger guy, probably with early college age, you would consider, and he had long curly hair, which was a popular haircut at the time. Most boys that age wore it kind of messy, and he had a green book back around. He was wearing a clean t-shirt and a pair of jeans. So there was nothing to really think about him except the way that he was confronting Rodney about making bombs. Well, when Rodney denied it the second time and said, I don't know what your problem is, dude, but you got to get the hell out of here, the boy pulled out a knife and swung it. Now, as a bystander, I'm kind of sitting here smoking the cigar, kind of trying to figure out what's going on, because we saw people out at the lot all the time, and I was about 15 feet away, and I didn't know what the guy was talking about, and I didn't think nothing of it until I saw the altercation happen. But what I saw next, I still remember to this day, because it looked like the guy swung at him with his fist. I didn't know anything. I thought they were about to get in a fight, which I was starting to panic already. But the amount of blood that I saw fall from Rodney's arm made me go white like a ghost. I ran in the dealership as fast as I could, yelling and screaming for help. And I was panicking. I didn't know what the heck to do. And nobody was around. I ended up looking at my finance manager, which was in a closed office with some customers, and I saw one of the salespeople after that. And after the fact, they told me that I came in incoherently babbling, like I wasn't making any sense. I said something of the nature of, Rodney's outside and he got cut. I didn't say that there was actually a murderer on the loose and that he had just stabbed Rodney. I said Rodney got cut outside. They didn't know the severity, but they saw that I was in a panic state. So as soon as, in my mind, as soon as I notified someone, I wanted to go back out and check on Rodney. So I ran to the back of the dealership again and checked on Rodney. The man, or the boy, and Rodney were playing cat and mouse kind of around the Honda Accord that he was actually detailing. The Honda Accord was facing the dealership and Rodney was behind it where the trunk is. He was holding his arm to stop himself from bleeding, and he was kind of like trying to juke the guy because the guy kept trying to get to him. All the time he was stabbing the car hood with the knife, saying, "I'm gonna get you," and stuff like that, you know, taunting him. So Rodney tells me to go get Roberto, okay? Roberto is, at the time, Roberto is the biggest guy at the car lot. He's about a 6-foot fella. He's really muscular, which kind of gives you the idea that Roberto is, he's a house, all right? So he says, Rodney says, go get Roberto when he sees me come through the door threshold. Now, the guy, noticing that Rodney tells that to me, turns around and starts chasing me with the knife. Guys, this was straight out of like a murder movie, okay? The man had a knife in his hand like a psychopath and was chasing me through the dealership with the knife. I ran into the back finance office, which wasn't used anymore, and I closed and locked the door immediately. Now, you've got to think, in a car dealership, most offices are open. There was only 3 doors in that whole dealership that weren't exits. 2 of them were the finance offices, 1 no longer used, and 1 of them was the front office where the store manager would sit. All of the other offices were open. So I ended up locking the door just in time, and I remember thinking for a split second that maybe I should keep it unlocked if Rodney wanted to seek refuge in here, but I decided against it. And as soon as I clicked the lock button, the door handle started shaking. It was a solid door, so I couldn't tell. There was no windows or anything, so I couldn't tell. But all of a sudden, I heard the knife prying in the lock. He was trying to get in, and he was like, "I'm gonna get you one way or another. I'm gonna get you." He was screaming that. And then I hear outside a commotion like, "Hey!" And then I start hearing a bunch of racket, okay? So from here on out, I did not see what happened, and I'll recap what happened to me in the office after that. But I started to call 911. I grabbed a golf club, and I sat there on the phone holding the golf club and notifying 911. This all happened in the span of a few minutes, by the way. So while this was happening, this was recapped from other people. So meanwhile, while I'm calling 911, this guy goes back into the dealership looking for his next victim. At this time, he heard the commotion going on. Apparently what had happened is Roberto had ended up finding out from Rodney, which had made his way to the front of the office while I distracted the guy while he was chasing me. He made it around the building into the front office where he told Roberto what had happened. Roberto ran back into the back of the dealership where the door threshold was that I had originally been chased through, and he ended up hitting the guy with a chair, which did not stop him, by the way. This was a metal foldable chair, the kind that you see in wrestling matches, okay? We had a few of them around the table in the back that we would use for a break area, and he ended up hitting that guy over the back with this chair when he was at the door trying to get to me, by the way. So it didn't stop the guy, and he turned on Roberto. Now, Roberto, again, he's over 6 foot tall. He's very athletic. He runs away from the guy very, very fast. There's no way that he could have caught him. But another one of the salespeople, Ali, had no idea what was going on and saw the guy running towards him. Before he can make out what was going on, he started to run away from him because he saw that he was coming with him from a knife. Ali was a little elderly, so he fell. He turned over and kind of fought the guy off with his legs for a moment, but the guy sidestepped him and ended up stabbing him multiple times on the ground. Roberto sees this and starts yelling at the guy. The guy ends up getting up and started running after Roberto again. Roberto ends up losing him once again, where the guy ends up making his way through the side door of the dealership to try to cut him off. All this time, the finance manager finally came out of the office and with the customers and is trying to make sense of what's going on, and he's on the phone with the police. The guy walks up to him and he cuts the phone wire and starts tussling with the finance manager, which is called Mike, okay? So he starts tussling with him, and Mike ends up getting stabbed twice. He actually got forcefully charged and thrown through one of the glass windows that was a portion of the wall of one of the open-doored sales offices. So he throws him through the glass window and ends up stabbing him twice. Roberto, at this time, is still outside, and the customers are freaking out. And the guy does not hurt the customers. He tells them, "I'm here to kill the devils," is exactly what he told them. Naturally, the guy is out of his mind, right? So by this time, 911 is showing up. The cops are showing up, and he went outside to try to find Roberto again. And before he got to Roberto, the cop car pulls between him and Roberto, the guy with the knife and Roberto, and tells him to lay down. Now, he doesn't put up a fight whatsoever, because in his mind, he was killing the devils, which was doing whatever justice or whatever. He's like, he thought the cops were on his side. So anyway, he puts his hands down, they cuff him, and they get him up without any more incident. But all this while, Rodney is bleeding to death in the front office. Ali is bleeding to death outside. I'm still shaking on the phone with 911, holding this golf club in my hand. And the 911 operator the entire time is giving me kind of a play-by-play of what's happening. Like, the police are on their way, the police are on the scene, we have ambulances en route. Do you know how many people are at the dealership? How many potential people could be hurt? All of this stuff. And I'm trying to give them as much information as possible, and I'm just scared out of my wits. But I can't see anything. All I can do is hear the calamity going outside. So finally, when they assure me that the guy is incarcerated, the cops have him, the cops knock at the door and they tell me it's okay to come out. I come out and there is blood everywhere, man. It's all over the carpets. It's all over the showroom floor. It's all over outside. It's in the front office. There's glass everywhere from the glass breaking. There's half of the phone line on the floor from where the guys cut it. It was a crime scene, y'all. It was absolutely crazy. So that's my intruder story. So everybody lived, okay? Ali ended up partially crippled because I think that one of the places that he got cut was his diaphragm, and it's very, very, very hard to recover from, I think. So he ended up being semi-retired. I'm pretty sure that the car dealership took care of him. Mike that got stabbed recovered. He was a little bit older, but he still recovered, and because he was in finance, he had a relatively easy sit-down job, and he ended up going back into finance. Rodney, on the other hand, had to have reconstructive surgery because when the guy cut him, he cut so far into his arm that he couldn't work his hand anymore. And so he had to all have it connected again. He had to go through physical therapy so he could have full range of motion on his hands and his fingers again. And I was emotionally scarred for life. That's why I could still depict it as I just tried to. So I hope I did a good description of giving you guys the idea of how things went down, but it was the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me in my life. I had another good story, but I'm gonna save that one for another day. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Have you had any crazy stuff that happened to you like that in your life? I would love to hear a story about it in the comments, guys. I read them all every time, and I really, really appreciate you being here today and listening to me go on. Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.